Hey everyone, welcome to this week's author reading of Rune Marked with myself and pdmac. We are reading chapter 7 and 8, and if you're obviously following the other videos, you know we're picking up right where we left off. So we will jump into it. Chapter 7, Gwen. Gwen spent most of the night tossing and turning, her anxious thoughts making her mind run wild. It didn't help that Kirith had answered her questions about the plan that Lyra mentioned. Oh, hadn't answered. Confusing. Lyra. Gwen knew there was something more to the woman. Her aspect alone was an oddity, but it was more than that. She wished she could figure it out, but whatever it was, it continued to elude her. Emil hadn't seemed to notice anything out of the ordinary, but Emil had traveled to many places. Gwen considered the possibility that she was overthinking things. When dawn came, she hadn't slept much. She was surprised to find that all of her aches and pains were gone, a blessing from bathing in the Thaestra water. The same young elven woman from the previous day made another appearance, bringing a tray full of food for breakfast. The options were the same, mostly fruits, and Gwen forced herself to accept that she would have to wait for meat until they returned to human lands, if they returned at all. The nobles are arriving for the trial, Kirith said from the balcony. It won't be long now. Gwen thought back to when they found him with the vagabonds. His hair had been matted with dried blood and he looked ragged. Even so, Gwen had still seen his beauty, had felt his regality shine through the roughness. Now that he was cleaned up, it shined doubly so. His hair had a natural glow to it, and his eyes held an excitement she didn't understand. And he and Emil shared something now, didn't they? Are you still refusing to tell us what this plan entails? Gwen asked, trying to stay focused. Trust me, Kira said, stepping back into the main room. I would never allow you to enter the path of danger in my homeland. Trust him. Those words reminded Gwen of Tobias, and a twinge of pain pulled at her heart. She closed her eyes for a moment and gritted her teeth against the hurt, waiting for it to pass, then opened her eyes again. I'm sorry if I have angered you, Kira was staring at her. It's not that, Gwen replied. Or you. It's nothing. Kirith bowed his head, but Gwen could tell he was curious about her reaction. She picked up an apple from the tray and bit into it. The crisp skin broke under her teeth, showering her tongue with a rush of sweet juice. She devoured the rest of the apple and waited. The young elven woman returned, this time bearing a purple robe. Kirith let her put it on him, then said something in another language to her. Gwen assumed it was Elvish. It sounded musical and tickled her ears. The young elf bowed to him, a smile playing at her lips, then left. Who is that? Emil asked. That is my sister, Talana. She's a servant? Gwen asked. Kirith laughed loudly. Talana is not a servant, he replied. His words were cut off as the doors opened fully, and a host of guards, including Haladivar, strode inside. My lord, Haladivar greeted Kirith, the court awaits your presence. Lead the way, Kirith replied. The guards were wearing extravagant capes, and their chainmail armor gleamed as if it had been polished. Their demeanor was solemn, their expressions serious. Gwen felt as though the trial was some sort of sacred ceremony, judging by the change of atmosphere. Kirith stepped into the hall, followed by Emil, then Gwen. Haladivar took the lead, and the host of guards moved into position around the three prisoners. Gwen didn't recognize anything they passed, but their arrival and detainment had been such a blur. She admired everything about Olivel, everything except King Falael. Kirith was so different from his father that she was tempted to question whether Kirith was truly from Falael's loins. The fact that they were so similar in appearance was the only reason she didn't. They walked down the stairs, all the way to the bottom floor. It was crowded with elves, both nobles and commoners, and guards lined the walls around the entire room. Falael was at the center of the room, seated on a chair made of tree roots. It curved gracefully up from the floor, and Gwen marveled at it, but she didn't think the chair looked very comfortable. It appeared to be more for looks than functionality. The crowd was gathered around the center, but a ring of guards around Falael kept everyone from getting too close to him. Apparently, Falael didn't trust his own people. Haladivar escorted them through the crowd and stopped outside the ring of guards. Falael stood up, and the room was silent. Welcome, nobles of Olivel. Today we must decide the fate of two criminals, but we must also choose a punishment for our wayward prince. The ring of guards parted, and Haladivar led Kirith to Falael's side. Gwen scanned the crowd, looking at the faces of the nobles. They looked proud and haughty, just like their king. She looked at Emil and had to hide her smile. The woman wore an expression that dared someone to test her anger. What are the charges against them? One of the nobles asked. Trespassing, Valel answered, and as everyone here knows, that means they must be executed. There was a general murmur of agreement throughout the room. Gwen turned her gaze to Falale, her anger rising at his words. They weren't trespassing, Kirith said loudly. The room went silent again, but this time Gwen noticed it was from shock. They rescued me from bandits who thought to collect a bounty on my head. A bounty put out by my father, no less. He speaks out of turn despite knowing the law, Falale said. Lyra's poisoning of his mind and the minds of our children must end. She has already been banned from this court, but clearly that is not enough. We must force her from Olivel. Excommunication, someone shouted. The word was repeated by others until the room echoed with it. Falale raised his hand, calling for order. I agree, Falale said. Every noble who votes in favor, raise your right hand. Gwen was surprised to see how many arms went up across the room. Lyra was odd, sure, but that didn't mean she should be removed from her own home. It is decided. Lyra Talanos has been excommunicated. Falale looked at Haladivar. Find her and remove her. The tone in his voice sent a shiver down Gwen's back. His command sounded more like an order for death. Haladivar bowed low and motioned to a few guards who followed him out of the chamber. Gwen wasn't sure how any of this fit into some sort of plan. Now get back to the humans, Falale said. They were caught trespassing with Prince Kirith as their prisoner. Haladivar himself found them and brought them here for trial. Every noble who votes them is guilty. Raise your right hand. Gwen's heart sank into her stomach as every noble in the room raised their hand into the air. Emil turned to the elves closest to her and shot them stares of death. A few of them stepped further away, but others ignored her. We need to escape, Gwen said to Emil. Whatever Lyra and Kirith have planned isn't happening now. Where do you plan to go? Emil asked. We're bound here as long as we have these bracelets on, remember? Gwen had forgotten. She tugged on her bracelet futilely while looking around the room, trying to plot out the best route of escape. There were too many guards and too many obstacles between them and the exit. It is also decided, Falale's voice echoed throughout the room. The humans are guilty and will be executed by nightfall. There was a low rumble of approval from the nobles. Lastly, we must decide upon a just punishment for our prince. He has allowed the lies from Lyra's mouth to pollute his mind and has even spoken evil in my presence. Who here would like to suggest his chastisement? Several nobles raised their hands and spoke at the same time. Falale smiled, and it made Gwen's stomach churn. He was enjoying the spectacle. The fact that he found delight at the prospect of his own son's torment was something Gwen couldn't fathom. There will be no punishment issued, an angry voice said. Gwen turned to see who had spoken and gasped when she saw Lyra striding through the archway. The crowd of elves parted to let her pass, but some of the guards along the wall rushed to stop her. Halt, she demanded. The guards hesitated, and even Gwen felt the authority in her voice. She wanted to obey Lyra, and she wasn't even moving. Stop her, Falale said. Remove her from this chamber. Guards, it was Kirith shouting. Nobles, it is time to rise. The room erupted in chaos. Guards turned on one another, as well as the nobles, snapping the magic, negating bracelets onto their wrists. Gwen drew close to Emil for safety, but the elves were too preoccupied with their fellows to care about them. Kirith pushed his father and put a bracelet onto Falale's wrist as the clang of steel rang out. The factions of guards struggled, those loyal to father and son pitted against one another. It's a coup, Emil said, a hint of surprise in her voice. Kirith is taking the throne. Gwen wondered if they were the cause of it all, but then she remembered Lyra's plan. This must have been what she meant. She looked for the woman in the crowd and saw her heading for Falale. I think it's about time. It's about to get bloody in here, Gwen said. We should get into the open. No, Emil replied. I want to see what happens. Before Gwen could make up her mind about fleeing the tree, Lyra grabbed Kirith's hand and lifted it. Hail your new king, Olivel. A cheer rang out, and Gwen realized the battle was over just as quickly as it began. Kirith's supporters had subdued the others. I excommunicate you, Falale snarled at Kirith. You are banished from this court. No, father, Kirith replied calmly. It is you who is banished from this court. The people have spoken this day. You and those loyal to you are hereby stripped of your titles and powers. As king of Olivel, I rescind the excommunication of Lyra and grant Gwen and Emil their freedom. They are friends of Olivel and are welcome in our lands at any time, with or without invitation. You can't do this, Falale said. You have no authority. Your age must be getting to your mind, Kirith replied. I just did. He motioned to one of his guards. Take him away. Valale was led up the stairs first, then the other nobles were escorted from the room. Those nobles loyal to Kirith remained, and he bestowed the titles and lands of those arrested to them. May it be remembered that the king of Olaville is the voice of the people. When that voice fails in its duty, another will speak in its place. Let everyone here never forget this lesson. As the crowd began to disperse, Kirith joined Gwen and Emil. Two guards stayed at his side. Thank you for trusting me, he said. Lyra and I laid this plan out before I was captured. I knew my father would never realize that Torian is a threat, so I did what I had to for my people and yours. I am sure Eridor and the rest of the rebellion will be proud to call you an ally, Gwen said. I'm sorry that you had to usurp your father. It is my hope that my father will come to see reason while he is locked up. If he can, then I may be tempted to step down and let him rule again. Though I do not believe he will, it is a heartfelt sentiment, Lyra said as she approached them. Gwen looked at her and saw the silver glow of her aspect. She wanted to ask her about it, but didn't feel like it was the right time. Instead, she offered Lyra a smile and then turned her attention back to Kirith. Can we have these removed? Gwen asked, lifting her arm and nodding at the bracelet. Of course, Kirith replied. One of the guards removed the bracelet from Gwen, and the other freed Emil. Gwen felt the magic surge back into her mind, its steady pulse thrumming in the rune on her hand. It reminded her that she might find another rune before she left Steepcross. Are there any mages here? Gwen asked. There are a few, Kirith said. Would you like to meet with one? Yes, I was hoping to gain another rune if anyone is willing. You and Emil are my honored guests. Nothing will be kept from you. Nothing? Emil asked. Her tone reminded Gwen of the previous night when she and Kirith had... Gwen's cheeks flushed in embarrassment at the memory. Nothing, Kirith confirmed. I would like to see the Thaistra River. Kirith's eyes widened briefly. It is forbidden to outsiders, but I will make an exception for you. I must attend to a few things, but I will meet you back here in an hour. Do you plan to come as well? Kirith asked, looking at Gwen. I would love to after meeting with one of your mages. Is that all right? That is agreeable. Lyra, would you mind showing Gwen to the mage you think best suited for her? I know just the one, Lyra replied, and since it is still early, I know exactly where to find him. Thank you, Gwen said to Kirith. It is I who should thank you, the both of you. If you hadn't rescued me, I think we'd find ourselves in a completely different place right now. Kirith looked at Emil. Feel free to wander until I return. I'll occupy myself, Emil smiled. Follow me, Lyra said, heading for the archway that led out of the tree. Gwen hurried after her, staring uncertainly at her aspect. She had noticed that Lyra was the only elf she'd seen with one that wasn't green. They left the tree and followed a path that forked to the left. Lyra slowed her pace so that Gwen could match her strides. I'm not blind to your mistrust, Lyra said. I didn't say I don't trust you, Gwen replied. You don't have to. I know why you stare at me so. Why is that? Lyra lowered her voice. Because you know that I am not an elf.
Chapter 8, Connell. Connell craned his head and stared into the pair of cold, bright eyes high above him. Where's Briok? He managed to say. He keeps watch over my hiding spot while I'm here, Crag replied. A wise precaution, don't you think? Certainly, Connell answered, still in awe as he took in the size of the beast, especially from the way things have been going around here lately. Lately? Crag snorted a dismissive laugh. Well, maybe longer than that, Connell sheepishly admitted before blurting, what kind of dragon are you? The question surprised, yet pleased Crag. I am a forest dragon. Wish it was daylight so I could see you better. I can see you just fine, Crag replied with a hint of humor. That's because you can see in the dark. Again, Crag was surprised. How is it that you know this? I used to read about dragons when I was young, Connell answered. Young? Crag laughed. In dragon years, you are still a baby. I know, Connell chuckled. Tell me then, if you read so much about dragons, why did you believe they did not exist? How did Briok told you that? Connell stepped closer. I suppose I was swayed by the absence of dragons for so many years. As is our habit, when something is missing for so long, we believe it no longer exists. Then the so-called experts begin writing about dragons of the past. and it doesn't take much effort to believe that there are no dragons anymore. Crag bent his head down to within inches of Connell's face, his large glowing eyes staring directly at him. I sense something different about you. Place your hand on my forehead. Connell reached a hand up, feeling the smoothness of the hardened scales and bumps on the dragon's forehead, then flattened his hand. Crag closed his eyes, and darkness swallowed the meadow. I feel an imbalance in you, Crag said. Something about who you are. He opened his eyes. You are unsure of who you are. Deep inside you, you know, but you are unconvinced. It's like you're waiting for something to happen that will settle it once and for all. Connell jerked his hand back. How can you tell that? I didn't feel anything. You were expecting our connection to hurt, like some rune bone? He sniffed and laughed. I'm a dragon, not some incantation scratched into a dried, brittle bone. If I wanted, I could have bound you to me for the rest of your life. Startled, Connell stepped back. It's not what you think, Crag reassured him. You don't know what I think, Connell retorted. First, Crag asserted, his voice firm, bonding with the dragon is a rare privilege that very few experience. Second, humans being violent creatures by nature, what makes you think I would want to bond with you? Third, I get it, Connell snapped. You're a powerful dragon who could impose his will on me. In fact, you're so powerful, you've been in hiding like a scared rabbit for the past 150 years. It came out before he could stop himself. Already he was imagining Briac cringing at his stupidity. Scared rabbit? Crag thundered, rising up on his rear legs, his wings unfurling. Refusing to be intimidated, Connell folded his arms across his chest. Yeah, a scared rabbit. I'm still trying to figure out why Briac was so keen on enlisting your help. If you're so powerful, why are you hiding? Why not just come out and assert yourself? Demand to be accepted. Wisps of smoke puffed out of Crag's nostrils. Easy for you to say, human. I have a name, Connell tartly reminded him. Crag's eyes flamed, then settled as he sat back down and folded his wings. Tell me, Connell, what would you do when everyone went out of their way to try and kill you? Suppose elves and dwarves suddenly made a pact to destroy humans, and you found yourself one of the last humans left. Would you be so bold as to stand up out in public and say, demand to be accepted? But I'm not as powerful as you are, Connell countered. When the forces of evil are marshaled against you, it doesn't matter how strong you are. When the odds are 10,000s to 1, what are your chances of winning? We few who remain know that our time is running out. In time, dragons will be a thing of the past. I and a few others have gone into hiding because there's no one who will join us. No one who will stand firm and say, no more. I will. Crag gazed kindly at the young man. You? Who are you that I should place my hope? I am a king's son, the king's son, Connell stoutly affirmed. Crag paused and smiled. So, you now accept who you are? Not you too, Connell groaned. Someone else remind you to accept who you are? Briac. The man's infuriating because he's always right. Don't tell him I said that. Crag chuckled. So, Connell, king's son, what is your quest? Out of the sounds, I'm going to reclaim my throne. And which one is that? The one Torian now usurps. Torian? Crag jerked upright. You're Cameron's son? So they say. Are you or are you not? The bright eyes flickered. Connell hesitated. He said it once already. Why was it so hard to say again? He's being noble when he told Crag that he would stand with him. If he said it now, it meant that he had to accept it, believe it, embrace it. Inhaling a deep breath, he answered, I am he. Crag rose on his back legs and flapped his wings. It's about time. About time for what? Connell asked, raising an eyebrow. Crag settled and stretched out before him, his huge face several feet away. What you seek to do is fraught with danger. Do you know the prophecy? Yes. Connell remembered Briac's warning to say nothing about his cobra brand. Then you know you will fall into Torian's hands. Your fate will depend on the one who is the cobra. Wouldn't that be our fate? Crag nodded. A wise answer. He abruptly jerked his head back, twitching his tail side to side, sniffing the air. Someone's coming. They're close. He thrust himself into the air, calling out, Briac knows where to find me. As Crag rose into the air, shouts bellowed from the opposite side of the clearing. There he is. Shoot him, quick. Aim for the heart. Arrows shot skyward as half a dozen men burst into the meadow, firing madly at the dragon, swirling and rising above them. Some arrows bounced harmlessly off Crag's thick skin. Others arced and fell back to earth. Enraged, Connell raced across the field, unsheathing his sword as he ran. Too late, the attackers shifted their efforts as the dervish burst upon them. The speed and precision of his attack as he cut and slashed sent 5 men to their quick deaths. Seeing his comrades cut down, 1 and 2 at a time, the last man took to his heels, jettisoning his bow and quiver and racing back to the woods. Connell stood in the middle of the carnage, his chest heaving as his anger dissipated. Looking up to the sky, he prayed Crag was unharmed and secure in his hiding place. A rising 3/4 moon gave light to the meadow. Glancing back down, he counted the bodies of the men he had just killed. 5. 5 bodies lay mangled at his feet. It was then he noticed long hair on the body closest to him. Using his foot, he flipped a still warm corpse over, revealing the tortured face of a young woman. His first reaction was overwhelming guilt. Not only had he killed again, he had killed a woman. Connell, Briac called out, pushing a man ahead of him into the clearing. Are you okay? I'm fine, he responded, forcibly pushing his remorse aside. I intercepted this one on the way back here, Briac explained, frog marching the man into where Connell stood. Once again, Connell was surprised, for the man turned out to be a woman, a little shorter than he, lithe with sharp features. Yet there was something odd about her. Though she had the look of a cornered hare, there was a fascination with Briac, bordering on slavish wonder. Briac looked down at the bodies. Watch her, he commanded as he knelt down to examine a body, picking up a limp hand to scrutinize it. He repeated the process with the others before standing to confront the woman. Show me your hand. When the woman didn't respond, but grinned stupidly at him, he grabbed her hand, causing her to yelp. He thrust the hands toward her face and twisted around so she could see the back of her hand. What is this? A loopy smile still plastered on her face. The woman stared at her hand, then at him. She reached a hand out to touch his face. Batting the hand away, he twisted the other around for Connell to see and jabbed a finger at the tattoo of a dragon's head with a lance through it. She's a dragon hunter. At one time, I might have thought that an absurd occupation, Connell said, but not anymore. Seems sort of strange that after all these years of no one ever seeing a dragon, they suddenly show up here at this very moment. He frowned at the woman. What's wrong with her? Briac twisted her arm to show the runes on the inside of her forearm. She'd been rune marked. He heaved a sigh of disgust. Haven't seen these in a long time. It marks the person as a dragon hunter, but the person is spirit bound to the owner of the rune bone. Back when dragon hunting was all the rage, there were lots of these kinds of people, all chasing the elusive dragon, reaping large rewards, only to discover too late that their lives were inextricably linked to their rune master. They spent their days searching for something they could never find, eventually dying out until there were no more dragon hunters. In the end, all the riches they thought they had belonged to the rune master, for they were compelled to search, never finding rest. So why now, Connell asked? Why the sudden appearance of dragon hunters? Brett glanced back towards the mountains where Crag lived in hiding. I think someone has discovered that dragons still exist and that they're on your side. Torian? Seems logical. Connell gazed at the woman. What do we do with her? Brett gripped the woman's wrist in his hand. In a speed almost too fast for Connell to see, Brett jerked the woman's arm, causing her to lurch forward. At the same time, he delivered a chop to her throat before spinning around with a slicing knife hand to her neck with such a force that it broke her neck. My God! Connell startled as the woman wobbled as if suspended in midair before crumpling to a heap. You killed her. Why did you kill her? She's a dragon hunter. Briac coldly answered. Well, yeah, but what? She came here to kill Crag. She failed because you were here. You killed the others. And now you're shocked because I kill her? But she didn't have a chance to defend herself, Connell objected. She ran as soon as she saw which way the battle went, Briac reminded him. Had she lived, she would have told Torian about Crag and about us, about where we were, and then returned to hunt again. She was rune bound. She had no other choice. What you should be worried about is how many other dragon hunters are out there. Connell knew he was right. The woman was a threat. One thing puzzled him. Why are you so keen on enlisting dragon help? Seems to me that they're going to be more of a problem because we have to protect them. Did you learn nothing in your talk with Crag? Briac sourly asked. Actually, no, Connell replied. We barely got to talking when they arrived. Speaking of they, what do we do with them? Leave them. It's obvious they were not killed by a dragon. Anyone coming up here would be on guard and want to move on as quickly as possible. We should get back. He led the way across the field and down the path to where the horses were, calmly waiting for them. Surprised they didn't take fright, Connell commented. They know when there's danger, Briac answered, and when they're safe. One thing still puzzles me, Connell said, swinging up into the saddle. How did they know Crag was here? If a dragon is so good at hiding that everyone thinks they no longer exist, how is it they knew where to look? That too concerns me, Briac grimly nodded. They rode back in silence, each lost in his own thoughts. As they approached the ruins, Connell sniffed the air. I smell campfire smoke. Not very smart for security. Hey, boss, a female voice called out as a woman stepped out from behind a great pillar before the barbican. Hello, Saren, Connell quietly replied, dismounting, then leading his horse through the gate. Horses are over there, she pointed to the opposite end of the barbican. Everyone's asleep except for me and another roving guard. Why is there a fire? Connell pointed at the circle of stones surrounding the rippling embers of the fire. Maldek thought you might need some help returning in the dark. That was a good idea, Briac interrupted. Deciding he was too tired and ready to find a spot to stretch out, Connell started to lead his horse to the tether line when the woman spoke. Had some folks come by not long after you left. 4 men and 2 women. Connell jerked to a halt. Who were they? Saren started snickering. Called themselves dragon hunters. Can you believe it? Who do they think they would fall for that? And they were serious as can be. Got mad when we laughed at them. When they said there were dragons close by, we knew they were loony. Where are they? Oh, she chuckled. We sent them off to Malvik, sent an escort with them to make sure they got as far away from here as possible. Haven't seen them since. That was just after you left. You didn't see them? No, Connell answered a little quicker than he needed. One odd thing, though, she commented. They said they're looking for you. For me? Connell sputtered. No, not you, boss. Him. She pointed a finger and now to gaze at Briac. They were looking for you.
All righty. That wraps it up for this week. So make sure you subscribe if you're not, and we'll see you next week with 9 and 10. See ya.